just talking to a friend who's wanting to explore the life of the entrepreneur and getting into business for himself. And I wanted to share some of the thoughts that I gave that I think are resonating, and probably more so to hear them, me say them to somebody else, were good for me to hear them for myself too. So the number one thing is, I think we get caught up in that most people that successful entrepreneurs somehow throw something magical into the marketplace and just overnight success mentality, which is so not true. I would argue that those who curate their own story to be the overnight success, like everything was just roses and we just went like a hockey stick, I would say are full of it, full of crap. Um, the real story is it takes trial and error and years. There's always something below that story that's going on, whether they were in another field or something happened, these misses and tries and stuff. Uh, and so it's all about experimenting and putting enough things out into the world, rolling your art out of enough into the sunshine and letting people interact with it and seeing what happens with it. I so much think of entrepreneurship as the experimenting scientist, that we have to roll out and test things and see. Like most of us, many of us, and I've met a lot of entrepreneurs, don't have a magic crystal ball and can predict the future. That they just don't get up to the plate and hit a home run right out of the gate. That it is so much trial and error, and there's so much failure and stumbling, and before there's success. And even with the success, I think there's more to the story, by the way, all of us. That it's just not the perfect press release that most of us put out our story to be. And so with that, as a new entrepreneur, is realizing like there's things that you're interested in and that you see a potential for. But I think we need to connect it first to ourselves and our vision. Like, are we connecting it to a people, a group of people that, like, in mind, this would help this particular person with their problem, solve their life, make their life better? And are there enough of that particular person out there to sustain some kind of business? And those are kind of the thoughts that goes in my mind. But so experimenting, knowing that it's going to take tries. I was mentioning, and I'll put the book in the show notes, but um, there's this book written by one of the founders of Y Combinator, and it was essentially about how Flickr came to be, and that it was part of a bigger thing, that like the community that they were doing, I want to say it was a video game community, but you'll see the parallels here. And they noticed like this file sharing type, file upload type thing feature in this bigger community was the thing that everybody freaking loved. Well, so what they did was they took it out, they saw what was working, and they created a company called Flickr. I don't even know if Flickr's around today, but the facet of like the, if you had been to Flickr when it first came out, you thought this is a brilliant idea. They just came out with it, just like burst it out onto the scene. No, it happened a part of something else, and they learned what works and what doesn't work. And this was working, so they pulled it out, made it into a company. I think that's so much like entrepreneurship, is pairing our interests, our passions, perhaps our skills, our experience and expertise out there for a particular person. Now, there's this great book called The Brain Audit, and it helped me with this notion of find one or three people that you really go, this is for them. What I'm doing, my product or service, is for them. And I think he says that you can narrow it down to one. Then you go, are there more people like that person? So for one, in mind, picture in mind that customer that you're building your product or service for, and then go, are there enough of those people, like those people out there to sustain a business or product? And putting that out there, rolling those things out into light of day. I'm trying to get better at this, by the way, is having an idea, but first, before we start with ideas, start with a person in mind, crafting the solution we think would help them, make them better, like this magical solution, but then putting that out there and seeing if that works or not. So much like the experimenting scientist. Entrepreneurship is just like that in my mind. Most of us don't just have this burst of like magic, genius and say, there it is. It's so much trial and error.